Welcome to Teams Tuesday, a podcast about mastering the best about what other people have already figured out. Teams Tuesday focuses on insights and lessons that never expire. You will walk away from every episode with actionable insights that help you get better results and be more productive.
This was about as darn easy as it gets.
The client just couldn't make up their mind.
I feel like we had top.
Went from a project of 20 weeks to just 2.
The DevOps was a cultural shift.
This is Teams Tuesday with your host, Peter Ward.
Welcome to Teams Tuesday. I can't believe it's the end of the year. Time flies, I suppose. And just as we thought we were coming out of COVID, it looks like we'll be a few more months where we're actually still stuck indoors. So we've got a great speaker. Again, she was about this time last year. She was the most watched person on the meetups from last year. Lizebeth Koloko-Green, I think I pronounced that correctly. So welcome to Teams Tuesday. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me, Peter, once again this year.
No problem, indeed. You've got the backdrop, the virtual backdrop. Very, very cool. Now, but your speciality, you are the one, almost like the OneNote diva, actually, aren't you?
Yes, I love using OneNote. I've been using it for about close to 15 years now. And right. I use it for everything from my personal life, for my work life. And I've also, conveyed my executives at work to also start using OneNote. So even I have a daughter and she also uses OneNote.
Well, yeah, we do that. I live and breathe by OneNote, all my tasks, everything. It's like the references and everything. It's the tool to just be organized. I can't stress that any further. So you've got a lot to demo, and I want to get to that. But just very quickly, introduce yourself. We know you live in Paris. I gave you that one. Your families and your hobbies.
Yes. So I'm Lizebeth Koloko-Green. So I was born in Paris in France, but I grew up in Fremont, California. I am a full-time executive assistant at an IT company. I support 3 executives and have over 20 years of experience as an executive assistant. I am also a Microsoft Office specialist expert. I have certification in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and OneNote. I'm also a computer software trainer for Microsoft 365 apps. Last year, a year ago, I created my company. I'm the CEO and founder of ANWOW, and it stands for Adopt New Ways of Working. Okay. And I love learning about new technologies and tools, which can help me save time and be more productive. And on a personal note, I currently live in Paris and have a 9-year-old daughter.
Right. Okay. Very, very cool. So, executive assistant. Okay, so how did you get into sort of becoming just so entrenched in the OneNote? It's like, what was the aha moment?
So I started using OneNote. Actually, I was pregnant with my daughter, and so actually before that. So before that, I started playing around with OneNote, but I wasn't really using it extensively. And when I was pregnant, I really started using OneNote all the time.
Right, okay. Some people's like Excel file and you think, oh my word, this is like Excel on steroids. It's a forecasting database with 10 million records in. And I think this is not quite what Excel is about, but you're making it work. Have you ever seen anyone's OneNote, which has just gone, it's like OneNote on steroids, which is, wait a minute here. This is not quite what OneNote's supposed to be doing, but it seems to kind of work.
OneNote, a lot of people get scared. They haven't used OneNote. It's really the unsung hero of the Microsoft Office suite. But in OneNote, you can have everything. You can have your handwritten notes. You can have, documents. You can have pictures. Even if you view online websites, you're reading an article, you can put it in OneNote. You can have audio recording, voice recording, handouts. So you can have all of this directly inside of OneNote. And the great thing is that you can, if you save it in the cloud, you can also share it with other people. So you can collaborate with other people, and you can use it on your PC, on your tablet, on your smartphone. So it's a very great tool to use.
Oh, totally. Well, in terms of like the last, say, 3 years, where would you see the OneNote direction is going?
So I think that, with Microsoft Teams now, more than 145 million daily users are using Microsoft Teams. I see a great integration now with, Microsoft Teams. Also, it has a great integration with other Office applications such as, Outlook. But I see it in the next few years with Microsoft Loop. All of the Microsoft 365 apps will be all interlocked together, and we will be able to use OneNote inside of all of these apps.
Right, I agree. Like now, OneNote, you can put it into meetings. It's great for taking the notes. It's almost also a bit like the meeting wiki on notes is not great, but if you use OneNote, it really adds so much depth and breadth to a meeting.
Exactly. And the great thing is that when you use the wiki, like you mentioned in Teams, everything is inside of Teams. But when you use OneNote in Teams, you can use it in Teams, or you can also use it as a separate app. So the great thing about OneNote, when you mentioned you can take your notes, you can also use templates as well. But when you're using it to take your notes, the great thing is that you can actually, when you create an Outlook invitation, you invite the guests, you can actually add a little OneNote meeting link. So anyone can take notes during the notes. So you don't have to only have one person taking the notes. Everybody that's part of that meeting can take their notes.
Okay, I have seen people do that. It's quite a nice, slick smoothness to a meeting, actually.
It is. And the great thing also is when OneNote, you can also, when you create your notes, if you're taking notes, there are some action items, you can actually transform these action items into Outlook tasks. So that's really great integration as well.
All right, you probably have a few slides and then the demo, I suspect.
Yes, so I have a few slides I wanted to share. So really, I wanted to speak about sharing some tips about, conducting hybrid meeting. So the first thing is really, what is a hybrid meeting? So hybrid meeting refers to the physical location of participant. So in hybrid meetings are meetings where some participants join remotely while the rest of the meeting attendees gather together in a meeting room. Mm-hmm. So essentially, we can consider any meeting with at least one remote participant a hybrid meeting. Before COVID, we actually had already a hybrid meeting, but most participants were actually joining on site. Yep. But now with COVID, we have more and more participants joining online. And sometimes if you're joining a meeting, on site, you have to wear a mask. So it's kind of hard to distinguish the facial expression of what is being said. And while it may be tempting to fall back to the habits of the old normal, it also will be missing on a once in a generation opportunity to build a better, more flexible work environment for everyone. So it's the new workplace, and hybrid, it's really unavailable. Mm-hmm. What has changed in the last 2 years? Now we have becoming more pros of using either Microsoft Teams or Zoom. We have developed new skills, and our level of expectations has also changed. So my conviction when you're conducting those hybrid meetings is to have the proper hardware, to set meeting rules, and to really develop new skills. So what do I mean by that? So when I speak about the hardware, it's really important to configure your workspace, particularly when you're working from home. After working from home for the last nearly 2 years now, and I've tried a lot of equipments, these are some of my recommendations of equipments that you can purchase to configure your workspace. It could be, ergonomic desk. I see, Peter, you have one. I have. Yeah. And before, I have one as well, but right now I'm sitting down. But before I actually bought an ergonomic desk, I actually was using my ironing board, because when you use the ironing board, you can actually bring it up or bring it down.
Low tech solution, I like it. Okay. What do you use for lighting though? Because don't you have one of those halo lights? I'm not seeing one of those.
So I actually have 2 halo lights. I also have, right now I'm using an external microphone. I always use 2 computers, one where I log in as an attendee and one where I log in as a presenter. So I can see, I'm presenting, but I can also see on my other computer what the attendees are seeing. So it helps me to adjust anything on my screen.
Yeah, that's a professional way of doing it. And with the microphone, I use the Snowball. What's your brand?
I use a Razer X Zirin, it's called. I bought this off my Amazon. I've tried different ones, but I think that this, actually I saw one of the Microsoft MVP. I was looking at a YouTube video one day and I saw this, and I did some research and I purchased that one, and it's been, it's been going really well. I really like this new microphone.
Cool.
And I also use a Jabra Polycom, a little mini speaker. Sometimes it's really important to have a great pair of headsets. But sometimes when you use the headsets all day, it can get really tiring and your ears start, you get hot. So really having that little Polycom Jabra speaker really helps. And, it can be funny when you see that on my slide, but it's really important throughout the day to stay hydrated. And if you can, there are times when actually, instead of sitting at home all day, I actually take some of my calls and I go for a walk, and I take some of my calls during my walk. And that really helps.
I do the same. Yeah.
Yeah. It forced me to get some fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I put also a little bit of, music, to kind of fuel my creativity. That also helps.
Mm-hmm. One of the things which I do sometimes, because you can now play back your background audio through Teams. So before the meeting starts, I might be playing some music in Spotify. So I just do that just so people know, there's something going on here.
Yeah, I also do that as well. Whenever I do a webinar, before I start the webinar, I like to put on some music just to put everyone in the mood. That always helps. And even when I close off the webinar, I also like to put some music to close off the session.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's important to note that when you set everything at home, it's also important to make sure that everything is set at work. Most conference rooms today are not hybrid ready, and it's really important to make use of the many benefits of technology. We're living in an interactive hybrid meeting. It's really fundamental to sustain the new way of working. So we have to rethink the ways of working, reorganize our space, and leverage technology. So what I usually recommend when you're in a meeting on site and there are some attendees logging in remotely, it's really important to embrace the laptop approach for all the in-person attendees. So I ask them to join the meeting with their cameras on and Microsoft off and audio off, because at the laptop camera, they're positioned at high level and centered on the individual so that the remote attendees can easily view speakers no matter where they are in the room. And if there's a conference room which is equipped with a large monitor, I want to make sure that the remote participant can be clearly seen on the front of the room screen so that they have a greater presence in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. So, these are some examples of hardwares that you can actually purchase as well to make your hybrid meeting more interactive. As I mentioned, most of the conference room are not equipped for hybrid meeting, and it's really important to upgrade the technology to make sure that, remote attendees are included. It's really important that everyone needs to hear properly and be heard, and everyone needs to see everyone and be seen. So, when you're attending a meeting remotely and some people are attending on site, they cannot see the body language. So it really, some of the things, if you're using Microsoft Teams, Microsoft has, some Teams room equipment, which may include, the 360-degree camera that you can set in the middle of the room. Okay. And you also have a Surface Hub with a whiteboard. Okay. So there, there are a lot of things that you can actually purchase for your different meetings. But it's also important that when, these equipments are purchased, that also the employees are trained to use them. It's really important. So my recommendation, what I usually do is make sure that, a few days before, I test all of the material to make sure that everything is set, even and to log in, a few minutes, it can be 15, half an hour. If you cannot prep a few days before, to log in at least 50 minutes before the meeting starts. So to make sure that everything is set before the meeting starts, because there's nothing worse than, logging into a meeting, nothing is set and you lose time just trying to make sure that everything works properly.
Yep. Okay. And it also creates the expectation of like, my time's not being respected here as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. What are your thoughts on keeping people's attention in meetings?
So I would say, the way to keep people's attention, there's several things. I think the first one is really to ask people to turn on their camera on. I think it's a great way to make sure that, because there's nothing worse when you're speaking with somebody and they have the camera turned on. You don't even know if they're paying attention or if they're, doing something else. Also, a great thing to do is, have icebreakers. It's always, great if you can to have icebreakers to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. I think that's something that I'd love to be able to do. In Microsoft Teams, you have the Together mode to make it more inclusive by having everyone in a single virtual space. So yeah, my top 3 will be, turn on the webcam to encourage everyone to turn it on. Use the Together mode to make it more inclusive by having everyone in a single virtual place, and use the icebreaker to lighten the mood a little bit. Yeah,
one thing I have seen the host has said, right, everybody's hands must be visible on the camera. So that means they're focused on the meeting, not on their emails.
Exactly. Also, one thing that's really important is to establish clear meeting rules and share them prior to the start of the meeting. It's really important that during your meeting, you also have created a safe environment for everyone. And one thing that I do when I organize, a hybrid meeting is to assign a facilitator to set the meeting ground rules to monitor the chat. And also, in Teams, you have the possibility to raise your hand. So also to monitor who has raised their hand to allow them to raise their questions in reaction, and also assign a meeting buddy for, if you have someone that's, attending on site, assign them, or someone I should say attending remotely, assign them a meeting buddy that's on site. So in case, there's any technical thing that arises, they can, refer to the meeting buddy, and the meeting buddy can say, hey, so-and-so is attending the session. She cannot see the screen. She cannot do this and do that. So that's always a great thing to be able to have that. And, if you want to assign some meeting rules, you don't really know where to start. There are a few really great examples online. You just have to Google it. And there are some really great examples of meeting room etiquettes.
Nice.
And it's important to share them before the meeting starts as well. And, when you're organizing your meeting, I know some people use Zoom, others use GoToMeetings, WebEx, but really Microsoft Teams, I highly recommend using Microsoft Teams. There's so many things that you can do, and Microsoft Teams supports your meeting before, during, and after. It's really accessible and inclusive. You can also share, the documents. When you prepare your meeting, you can share the documents beforehand. You can chat before your meeting starts, during the meeting, even after the meeting. And yeah, everything is really, and to leverage Team not only for your meeting, but also outside of your meeting is really the way to go.
Totally.
And when I mentioned that you need to adapt your roles and before the meeting starts, it's also important to set different roles. What is the role in your meeting of the attendees? What are the role of the meeting organizer and the guests? So it's really important to determine the roles. What is the organizer supposed to do? What is the presenter supposed to do? What is the attendees? What are they expected to do? And also the external guests, what are they expected to do? So you have to really set that before the meeting starts. And of course, not all meetings can be done remotely. There's some meetings that still need to take place physically. And one of the things that I really love is using the raise hand feature, particularly if you're in a meeting with, several people. You can actually use the raise hand so that, you hard mute everybody and you ask them if they have any questions to raise their hand, so that when they raise their hand, you can allow them to, you can unmute their microphone so they can raise their questions. So that's a feature that's available in Microsoft Teams. And I know I was saying that in a webinar the other day, but when we were in school, when we wanted to speak in class, we had to raise our hand. It's the same thing when you're, conducting a meeting in Microsoft Teams. Mm-hmm. So, it's really important to make your hybrid meeting inclusive and effective. And so, yeah, that's really an important thing. Now, I want to share, a few tips for, conducting hybrid meetings using Microsoft Teams. And also, it's important to remember to leverage Team outside meetings as your digital place to work. Okay. So one of the first tips is when you are creating a Teams meeting, you can actually create it in Outlook or in Microsoft Teams. If you're like me, I'm an executive assistant. A lot of time I need to create a meeting on behalf of somebody else. I cannot do that in Teams currently, so I still need to use Outlook to do so. So when you're creating a meeting, it's also important to set the different meeting options. So you can, one of the options that you have is the lobby feature to enhance your meeting privacy. So you can actually set who is allowed to bypass the lobby. Is it people within your organization, external guests, or nobody? Okay. So what I usually do is that I set the lobby that no one can bypass the lobby, okay? Because I want to be able, because I always like to log in to the meeting a few minutes before to make sure that everything is set. And then I'm the one that accepts everyone into the meeting. But a minute before the meeting starts, I allow everyone inside of the meeting, because there are some, French people sometimes are late to the meeting, and I don't want to have to, I don't know if there's any French attending today's live event, but
Do you do already Italians?
No, but I know because, I'm based in France and I organize meetings, and a lot of time people are late. Okay. It's not like, I'm the assistant to two of my managers actually are German, and, German, they're very straightforward, and they have, I know that when I schedule a meeting for the German team, they're always on time, even they actually join the meeting a few minutes before. Same with
so who's the worst? So obviously the Germans and the Swiss, are probably super pro, who's the worst? Is it the French, the Spanish, the Italians? Who's the worst?
I would say, attendees from the Latin countries, France, Italy, Spain. I was also organizing a meeting with attendees from Northwest Africa also. And yeah, we were at a meeting, I always know that usually the meeting don't start on time. So what I do is that sometimes I will, when I send the meeting invitation, I always, have like a 5 to 10 minute, time where I know we can have an icebreaker that allows other attendees to join the session.
Right, okay.
So yeah, it's really important when you're scheduling your meeting in Teams, if you're using Outlook or Teams, to really set your meeting options. Who is allowed to bypass the lobby? It's very important to set who is allowed to present. I remember the other day I attended a session, there was over 100 people and the organizer did not set the meeting option. So during the session, there was someone that just, started sharing his screen, and even though they were not allowed to do that. So it's really important to really set your meeting option before the meeting starts. And also allow the attendees to chat. It's always great to be able to allow the attendees to chat before the meeting, during the meeting, and even after the meeting if you want. You also have the possibility of adding applications. Okay, so, my thing is whenever I create a meeting using Microsoft Teams, I always make sure that I prep the meeting. So what I mean by that is I share the documents beforehand. So, and all of the pre-work. I also prepare the meeting notes. I use Microsoft OneNote. If I need to conduct a survey or a quiz, I prepare my survey or quiz using Microsoft Form. So I prepare that before the meeting, and I can launch the survey or the quiz during the meeting, and I can view the results live. So, and also, of course, it's important to share the agenda and all further information. It's really important to share that before the meeting starts. And I love to use Whiteboard, Microsoft Whiteboard, for any of the brainstorming sessions that we have. I use Microsoft Whiteboard for that.
Do you ever use the digital pen, the Microsoft service? Do you ever use the pen?
Yes, I do. And I actually use Microsoft Whiteboard on my Surface laptop, yes.
Yep, okay.
I love it. Taking handwritten notes.
It's come a long way in recent years.
Yes, it has. And I recommend if you're using a Surface Pro laptop to use a OneNote for Windows 10. It's really great because you have a great color pencils as well that you can use. And I'm a very visual person. I love to have a lot of colors in my notes. So yeah.
And did you know the Surface Pen with the top bit, that is actually a clicker where you can actually progress to the next slide? Yes.
I actually found that out recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally like, actually, yes. Channel 9 on one of the videos, did you see that on one of the Channel 9, one of the videos was talking about presentation skills?
No, it was actually, I was conducting a webinar and I just, someone was talking and I just pressed my pen and all of a sudden it changed my slide and I was like, wow, that's something new that I learned.
Yeah.
I love learning new things every day. So I was mentioning before, it's really important to prep your meeting before and, publish the agenda, use Microsoft Whiteboard and avoid sending emails. So really the great thing about using Microsoft Teams is it's your hub for teamwork. So everything is in one place and you don't even need to use emails to prep for your meeting. It's really important also to be inclusive. And what I actually like to do for larger group is we assign roles for the lead, for the who's going to present, who's going to be in charge of support. I take them the notes and I also take pictures and share outcomes for the people who could not join the meeting. So it's really important to be creative and use technology to improve the remote experience.
Yeah, and you also got the attendee list as well.
Yes, exactly. And something that is coming soon into Microsoft Outlook is in the meeting planning, they have the redesigned working hours, which allows you to include the work specific directly in your calendar so others can know when and where you'll be working. So there's a new RSVP feature that will let people specify whether they will also attend the meeting in person or online. So you have the working hours where you can specify if you're working remotely, and you also have the RSVP where you can actually let people know if you will attend the meeting online or in person.
Well, that's quite good if you want to know how much coffee in the conference room and stuff, and also social distancing as well.
Exactly.
To say, look, wait a minute here, I can only have 6 people in the conference room, and we're not having 10, particularly in this climate.
Yeah. And also when you're conducting your meeting, make sure that you have planned breaks. I usually try to have, if it's a long meeting, to have at least a break every hour or hour and a half. Okay. And before we take a break, to make sure that I communicate when we will start back again. What I do is I display a timer on the screen and ask all the attendees to be back before the planned time. And, I also send a reminder ping to announce that we're back. And I ask them when we actually want a break to mute their microphone and turn off their camera. These are little things that can really make your meeting successful.
We have a timer on there. Is that a web app, or what are you using for that?
I actually use the timer that's part of Windows 10. There's a timer that you can use. When you click on the start menu and then you type timer, and then the app is called Alarm and Clock. And then when you launch that, you have access to your timer. That's the one that I use. Also, when I have a large meeting, like for an all hands, for example, what I usually do is I create a SharePoint page where I can share the agenda. I also have, a countdown to the meeting. I also said, I have used Microsoft List. I prepared, a list where, the attendees can add their questions that they like to raise during the meeting. So really, instead of exchanging an email, sending an email to the attendees, hey, do you have any questions for for the host? I preferred actually to just create a SharePoint page and have all of the information in that SharePoint page. And the great thing is that I can add that SharePoint page as a tab in Microsoft Teams. When you are in a meeting, you also have the possibility of personalizing your space using custom background. Okay, you can also create one that's only dedicated for the team. And also it's a great thing because it removes the distraction from videos. So, my recommendation, if you can use the custom background that are part of Microsoft Teams. You can also create your own background. What I usually do, if I want to create my own background, I take a PowerPoint slide, add the pictures and all the words to it, and I save it as a JPEG and I insert it into Microsoft Teams. So it's my personalized virtual background. And if you don't want to use any of the background, you can use the background blur. So that came out in Microsoft Teams a few weeks ago. It's also very important in your meetings to be inclusive. So you can actually use the live captions and transcript. The great thing about live caption is in real time, and the transcript, it really helps when you actually turn on the live transcript for your meeting notes. That really helps. And the great thing about the live captions is that before it was only in English, but now it's in different languages in Microsoft Teams. So the other day my execs were speaking German, and we actually turned on the live captions in German, and that really worked really well. So that's great. That's great.
Yeah, you're coming in across more language. How many languages do you speak, by the way?
I speak French, English fluently, and 2 African dialects, and I'm learning German and Mandarin Chinese.
Very cool. So yeah, because in the US, basically, it's very unusual for me to be in a meeting where it's not English. It's 99.9% English. Okay, if it's not English, it's probably Gujarati, which is our India office.
And I know that the other day I conducted a webinar for my customer based in California, and in California, there's a lot of Spanish speaking people, so it's also great. I went back to California last month, and I was very impressed because now, in public places I'm from Fremont. In Fremont, there's things that are now written in English, Spanish, and even Chinese. So it's a great way to to have a diversity and to be inclusive for everybody for all the residents in California. Mm-hmm. Also, Microsoft Teams is a great thing to be able to record the meeting for the attendees who are not able to attend the session. So that's really important. And in Microsoft Teams, when you record your meetings, before it was saved in Microsoft Stream, now it's saved in your OneDrive for Business account. So you have the possibility of sharing the link to the attendees after the session.
And so outside people as well. That was one of the big complaints I got from Teams, that the recording, you had to sort of download it. You couldn't and put it into OneDrive. You couldn't share it with an outside party.
Exactly. And now you have the possibility of sharing it with outside parties. It's really a great thing.
Yep.
And also when, I was mentioning the recording and the transcription, it's really, really, I've been starting using transcription. It's really, really great feature to be able to use. So make sure that you leverage those and use them, the recording and the transcript. And the transcript, sometimes when you are attending a meeting and someone, English may not be their first language, for example, and they may have an accent or something like that, using the transcript, it makes it easier to follow. Or if English is not the attendee, English is not their first language, having the transcript is really a great way to be able to follow along the meeting. And it's a great accessibility feature also.
Here's a question. Is the transcripts searchable? Okay, i.e. somebody, like we had 10 meetings, somebody mentioned, standard 254, but I don't know which meeting. Can I search, is the transcript searchable?
It's a great question. I've never actually searched the transcript, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question. But what I will do is I will look for the answer and I'll make sure that I'll email you after the session, because it's a great question. I've never tried to search in the transcript before. Right. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important to set the different rules and to really communicate them at the start of the meeting. It's important to really share with the attendees how you want them to interact during the meeting. Okay, so that's really, and what I usually have is I have my first slide in my PowerPoint where I list all of the meeting rules, how I want the attendees to really interact during the meeting. It's really important to be able to share that information with the attendees. Mm-hmm. And it's really, it's really important to create, a safe environment and to encourage everyone to speak up during this meeting. So first, you have to make sure that everyone stays focused on the meeting, and that they'll also listen to others and they mute their microphone when they're not speaking. It's important to ensure that all the voices are heard, so that, to include everyone's ideas and, ask even questions. If you don't hear from someone that's part of the meeting, ask them, if you don't hear from them. And as I mentioned, really establish role, but it's important when you're establishing these rules that the environment is safe for everyone, to be part of that meeting.
So a nice feature which Zoom has is that you can be on mute, and if you want to unmute it, you can press the space bar, which when we've done migrations into Teams, that's been it, but that feature is now coming into Teams.
Yes, and that's really great feature. And also I purchased these new Jabra headsets, and actually when you toggle on the the little speaker, when you bring it up, you have the possibility of muting yourself automatically. So that's really good.
Do you want to just put your camera on so we can see these?
Yes, let me just put my camera, and I'm going to also show you my speaker. So let me just give me a second here. Do you see me here? And
I do. I do see the hands, yes.
Okay. So when I have it on, okay, if I turn it here like this, it actually mutes my headsets. So that's a really, so you just turn it like
this. This is very professional. Like a call center, actually, yes. Very professional, yes.
Yeah. So this is when I'm in a one-to-one meeting, I usually use these. I also have, I have a lot of things here. I also have my Jabra here. You can see those, I have Jabra. I also have, an external microphone. So yeah, I have a few devices.
Well, what's also good with the headset, if it's Bluetooth, you can actually, in a meeting, if you have your camera off, you can actually do other things. Like, exactly. Like make a cup of coffee, because particularly when you've got back-to-back meetings, it's almost like that. I just need to get a glass of water or something like that.
Yeah, that's really great. So yeah, I would highly recommend. These are the new Jabras actually. They call Jabra Evolved 2. Yeah, I had the old one and I have these ones. So yeah, they're very useful. I highly recommend them.
Yeah, I use the Bose actually.
And the Bose are really good also.
Yeah, well, Bose have been around. Like I'm often seeing the Microsoft. They do have the headset. How that compares, I don't know. But I've just got the Bose because I've had these for years. Yeah, and
Bose is also a very good brand.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's their speciality. It's German. I think they're German. Yeah, specialty.
They say Dutch qualiteit. The German quality.
I've sometimes you don't get this now, but I don't get this now, but sometimes. So like I say, 10 years ago, people would say, oh, I hate SharePoint, I hate the UI. And I say, like SharePoint is a bit like German engineering. It's very good, but not very intuitive. You can take that quote if you want.
Thanks. And so I mentioned earlier about creating intimacy in your meeting. You can use the together mode. I love using the together mode. Kind of makes us feel like we're in a classroom, so that's really great. And there's some really great, also I love using icebreakers also as well. When you actually use Microsoft Whiteboard, there are some different templates which you can use. And in Microsoft Whiteboard, one of the templates, they have some icebreaker templates also. So that's really,
What are your icebreaker questions? Give me, what are your top icebreaker questions?
I like to play, I played that the other day, is it two truth and a lie? Where, the participant will say, they will state 3 sentences. 2 of them is the truth, 1 of them is a lie. Yeah, that one is a very popular in my team. We like to play that one. And sometimes we also have who has the best, virtual background. Right now is the whole Christmas theme background. So that's really
okay. Yeah, when I've done the town hall meetings, I would do it like, what are people watching on Netflix? Okay, and I'll tell them to throw it into the chats. Okay, other ones have been like, what's people's favorite Indian dish? So cooking. Yeah. And that did that. Otherwise, what was your first car you ever bought? Okay, and then find a picture of the year of it as well. And you on that. That's a little bit of fun stuff, just to get the energy of the virtual room, pumped up a little bit.
And also something also that I also do for my execs, if for example, it's the other day we had a workshop for 3 days, and on the second day, the icebreaker was I did a little quiz to kind of see if they actually remembered what was being said the day before. So that was also very nice. They actually
a recap summary. Yeah, that keeps people on their toes as well. Because sometimes particularly if you're doing training, it can be exhausting just breaking through to sort of get people's attention, to get them engaged and everything. It's because they're a bit passive on the whole thing.
They are, yeah, I agree. So yeah, it's really, there's so many, icebreaker ideas also. When you search on the internet, they have, a lot of icebreakers ideas. Also, the great thing when you're using Microsoft Teams, when you're using PowerPoint Live, you can actually, when you are the presenter, you can actually use the presenter mode directly into PowerPoint Live. So that's really great because you have your slides on one side and you also have your notes on the other side. You can use the laser pointer, so you can actually make annotations directly in your presentation, and you can actually, that draws the attention on different parts of your presentation. That really helps the audience to follow along. And also the attendees have the possibility of, navigating through your slides if you allow them to do that at their own pace, so that, so that's really great. So if you, allow the attendees to view your slides as well, so let's say, if you go too fast in your presentation, you've moved on to another slide, the attendees have the possibility of reverting back to your previous slide if they need to. And one of my favorite actually is the slide translate, which allows the attendees to see the presentation in their chosen language. That's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That's one of my favorite actually feature, I would say, in Teams. It's also one of my last tip will be to really make your meeting more interactive. So, ask the attendees to react in real time by using the reaction buttons, really to provide their feedback. And also, if to congratulate other people, they can use the reaction. If they want to talk, to raise their hand, and also in the chat to use the Giphies and emojis. Or if they want to ask questions, if they're not comfortable using the raise hand, they can also ask their questions in the chat.
All right, we're almost out of time here. Lizebeth, this is fantastic stuff. I will also put this, when the recording comes out, push it across social media. And if you want to put your website in the chat for some of the attendees, that would be great as well. I'll push that across social media. I know it's probably a little late where you are. Was it 6 o'clock, is it?
It's actually 7 now, 7 o'clock, 7 p.m.
All right, I will let you go. Thank you so much for being our guest on Teams Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.